Mr. Fletcher, suppose we take your view of what encourage and induce means here, and we take your view of the correct mens rea requirement, and suppose we say that's the statute. And is there a world of cases where, I mean, what happens to all the cases where it could be a lawyer, it could be a doctor, it could be a neighbor, it could be a friend, it could be a teacher, it could be anybody, says to a non-citizen, I really think you should stay. What happens to that world of cases?
So I think our view is those cases get analyzed the same way that you'd analyze any other aiding and abetting question or solicitation question under any other statute. And I'll talk about how that we think those principles cash out as applied to all of the different hypotheticals that have been bandied about. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing for this Court's purposes is once you take the two steps that you just described of saying that the words mean what we say they mean and that the intent requirement applies, I think you've taken care of any arguable overbreadth problem.
Well, maybe or maybe not. I mean, I would think that there are a world of communications that take place every day, which are something along those lines, with somebody saying to a non-citizen, I know you're thinking of what you should do now, I really think you should stay.
So just to fight the premise, and then I'll talk about how we think the principles would apply in those circumstances. You know, the traditional aiding and abetting solicitation statutes apply to tax avoidance, to the use of marijuana, to avoiding the draft back when that was an issue. Like in all of those circumstances, you likewise have to draw the line. There's a lot of abstract advocacy on those things. People talk with their friends and acquaintances and families.
So where do we draw the line? You're not giving me much.
Sorry, I promised I would get there, and I will. I think you apply the traditional principles of aiding and abetting. So one of them is specific intent that the violation occur. We think that's going to weed out all
Yeah, I
cases.
really think you should stay, somebody says to a friend.
Right.
I mean, that's a specific intent, I guess.
Right. Another one is your full knowledge of the circumstances, and that in this statute includes additionally some knowledge of the law, knowledge or reckless disregard of whether or not staying is going to violate the law. We think that's going to take care of another category of cases. There's also a requirement that's always been understood to be implicit in solicitation and aiding and abetting, that they don't cover general advocacy. You know, a newspaper editorial, general advocacy, public speeches, we're talking about specific conduct with specific people. I think that takes care of another slice of cases. And then you're left with the cases that, while I'll candidly acknowledge are the hardest hypotheticals, where somebody says to a family member, I know it would be unlawful for you to stay, but I think you should stay. Those are a hard problem under aiding and abetting statutes. There's not a lot of law on how you end up cashing out aiding and abetting principles there. The closest we find is in footnote 55 of section 13.2 of the Lefebvre Treatise, which we cite in our opening brief. And there the Court has said, look, when you're talking about aid and the form of aiding and abetting takes material aid, as you said for the Court in Rosemond, any amount of aid is enough. You've associated with the venture you've sought to facilitate it, and that's good enough. When what you're talking about is just sort of moral suasion or a request, that can sometimes be aiding and abetting. Recruiting someone to commit a murder is sort of a classic case of aiding and abetting. But we want to demand a little bit more to make sure that you really did associate yourself with the venture, you really did seek to facilitate it with your request.
So do I understand you to be drawing a line between a friend who says, I know exactly what the law is on this and I really think you should stay, which would be in violation of the law, that's on one side of the line, and saying that exact same thing and saying also I'm going to provide you support when you say. Is that the line you're drawing?
Not precisely. I think saying, I'm going to provide you support, I'm going to tell you how to do it, here's how to work without being on the books. I think those things start to move you much more into assistance.
But on the first one, where there's not that, do I take you to be saying, well, this is very hard, but in the end, we don't think that that's covered by the statute? Or we do think that that's covered by the statute?
I think it's hard to say that that's covered. I've read a lot of aiding and abetting cases to get ready for this argument. I haven't seen one that looks like that. The mother who says to the son, gee, I don't want you to